Hey, Gary and John, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
So obviously, you guys are partners here, and we want to get into that. But first, I want to kind of get drill down a little bit on each of your personal journeys. So maybe we'll start with Gary. Gary, what is your history with real estate, and why did you get started with real estate, and kind of what did you do early on?
Well, my first experience was purchasing a duplex. And the reason I did that is I was somewhat handy and wanted to save a little bit of money in purchasing my first house. And I caught the bug. I thought, wow, what a fantastic opportunity. And I then started purchasing more and more. I got up to a total of 17 units, managed them all myself and owned them. They were all local, and was just really enjoying that as I was working full time. And that was kind of how I got started.
Why did you get it started, Gary? Why did you even start dabbling in real estate?
I saw the potential for living cost-free. I bought my first double. I met my wife. We bought another double. And at that time, we were not paying any rent at all. The 3 units were paying for our living expenses. And from there, I just caught the bug. I was like, this is fantastic, a fantastic way to go. I hadn't really started listening to anyone else who was doing it. So I just kind of started, that and began on my journey. After we got married, I bought a few more. I went in and did a refinance on the 3 that I had, pulled some equity out, and just kept that going.
And that worked pretty well. You had a certain amount of units of these smaller multifamily that you had going on. At what point did you shift and you said, hey, I want to go bigger? Like, why did that happen?
Well, I was listening to podcasts.
Oh, imagine that.
I think you have him as a speaker coming up on in the next event, and you were a guest, and I got hooked. You were talking about the syndication business. At that point there, I took a look at the material that you had provided and took a trip down to Reston, and the rest is history. I was really hooked on the syndication process, and wanted to learn everything I could about that. So I came back from Reston after looking at the material and understanding it, and started to make offers. I went out, and my wife and I were, she wasn't quite as on board because she hadn't gone through the education that I had. So I was, kind of dabbling and, stumbling. I made a couple of offers, nothing that really stuck. In fact, I got really nervous. I think one of them was accepted, but I think a gut check told me that I'm not sure I was quite ready to do this on my own. And
how did you overcome that? That's a very common feeling. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not so sure. What did you do about that?
I partnered up. This is where John comes in. We belong to the same local real estate group, and it was a Christmas party, and he had heard me talk. I was at a meeting and talking about this syndication thing, and he approached me and said, hey, I heard, you're interested in this syndication, and the rest is history. We decided to work together.
All right, that's a great segue to John. John, give us a little backstory on yourself.
All right. So I've always been an investor my whole life, looking to try to make passive income, investing in real estate, mostly in stocks at first, and realizing that it's a path, but it's not the only path. And I needed to get somewhere quicker. I was probably in my mid 40s and realizing that, or early 40s, that I had to do more. So we started looking at real estate as an opportunity to buy houses at a low price, renovate them. Like Gary said, I'm a very handy person. I can renovate anything from the top to the bottom of a house. And problem is, I don't realize I waste all my time doing it, but I still enjoy doing that part of it. So I started buying houses and renovating them and renting them out. And it seemed to work really well for me. But then I realized how long it took and the work behind it. And I'm not getting younger. And I'm like, wow, this isn't going to work for me very well. So I really started reaching out, looking for other avenues, podcasts, going to seminars, and same thing like Gary. It's funny because I believe the same place he heard you talk, I heard you talk, and you resonated to me. The way you were talking, what you're talking about, the whole kind of like from the beginning to end, how you approached it really kind of connected well with me. And I saw the path. It just made sense to me. And I started digging into it more. I started listening to all your podcasts, started researching you more. And it kind of brought me down that path where I was hungry to go into big multifamily. And that's why I, went down to Ruston like Gary again. And when I came back, it was the Christmas party and like he was talking about. And I was already charged up and ready to go. And I knew he was just waiting for somebody to come up to him and talk the language he was talking. And when I did, you could see the smile on his face. He's just like, brother, let's go forward. Let's start talking about how we can make this work for us. So it was kind of full circle at that point where we kind of made the connection. And so let's go try to work together and see where it goes.
Why did you guys decide to work together? And what was behind that? Why do you think that's a good idea?
Well, I think we both saw that we each had strengths. We're based in knowing multifamily and understanding that. We were going to the meetings and really were dedicated. I saw in John a very optimistic person, that kind of a real can-do attitude about things. I'm in IT, I'm very analytical, and I was looking at deals and having a tough time getting to that point to where I was just talking myself out of everything. So it seemed, and John, we started analyzing deals together, and he was seeing different opportunities to make the deal work. So I was, instantly attracted to that because that's what I needed was some, positivity to help, push us over that hurdle. And that's how we, got together and yeah.
So John, maybe you can answer the question from your side as well. Also maybe talk about how you guys are splitting up your roles and responsibilities as you work together. Well,
Gary kind of was saying he's from IT. So he was already very computer savvy, always dealing with a lot of the day-to-day stuff. And when we started looking at deals, he was really good at doing the research on getting the pricing for like the real estate taxes, getting a hold of different people from the town to find out the nitty-gritty of cost. Which really helped me a lot because I work a 6 a.m. to 3 o'clock job every day that I'm busy working with my hands. I'm not a person that has the time to make all the phone calls. And Gary really complimented me on that side of it. That being said, I'm really into analyzing like spreadsheets. I love data. I love to see stuff. I love to kind of work through it. And I think with Gary and me, I think Gary burned himself out on it a little bit. I think he didn't really enjoy the numbers as much, but I looked at him and I saw the path of where we could go. And, where the potential came from if you worked it out the proper way. So I think between the two of us, we kind of, one took one end and one took the other end, and we kind of met at the middle is in the process. So it really worked well for us.
So how do you do it now? So who's the deal finder? Who's the capital raiser right now? Do you share that, or does one kind of gravitate towards the other?
We both share that. I think we're always looking, when it comes to raising capital, we went down a path of, instead of going after friends and family, I think both Gary and me agreed early on that wasn't the path we wanted to go down. So we decided to start up a local meetup group. And with our meetup group, we right away from day one, since we had a good connection with the local real estate groups, we were able to bring in people that were interested in learning more about large multifamily. That being said, every month they seem to grow our group. And what we did when we did find properties and go out and visit them and do our research and try to come back, we came back to our meetings and shared it with our group, and which worked really well for us because when we worked down the path where we found the first property, most of our investors came from our group. They already went down the path with us and they learned the process and they're excited about getting involved.
So that is such a good point. Because there's always this like chicken and egg factor that comes in. Do I get the deal first? Do I get the money first? How do I put them together? What do I do? That. And I think, the way that at least we've found success and in the past is kind of priming things up, right? Like you can take, a lot of people don't know this. You can go out and take, a fake deal packet. Hey, this is what it could look like. When we go do it, this is what it may look like, something like this. And you just share it with people. And then, you've already primed that audience. And that's what you guys just did through your RIA. You primed the audience. And then when it came time, oh, here's a deal that looks like the one I've been talking about for the last 4 months, 5 months. All right, let's go. Yeah. Versus sometimes people say, well, if I just find the deal, everybody's going to come. And it's not like that a lot of times. And so I think that that's a pretty unique approach that you guys have with that. So you guys were just going to your local RIAs. Was there anything else you were doing to network to kind of build up that database?
Yeah, what we did is we kind of created a split off group. We, as you know, our local RIA was, they're primarily focused on smaller multifamily, the duplexes and whatnot, and that's great. And they have other split off groups that talk about landlording, et cetera. So we started a group. We called it the Upstate Commercial Apartment Investors Group, and we started meeting at our local library. It was a free venue, and we would always consistently have 20, 25 people showing up at each meeting. We did it once a month, and we do a little presentation. We'd throw up some slides, and we talk about the aspects of syndication, because many were like, oh, what is this? I haven't really heard about this. Hey, you can become an owner of a larger apartment building. And, there was a lot of people that had interest in that. So we started having our own separate meetings that, were a lot of the members were from the original RIA, and then they brought friends of theirs that had interest. So we kind of grew our own. We're up over, 200 plus members. At this point, we branched out to both Rochester, Syracuse, and Buffalo at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So let's talk about that first deal, you guys, a little bit, because, how did you guys find it?
So the deal initially actually came through a broker. It was a very large portfolio of 8 properties, well beyond what we felt at the time we could take down. But we focused in on one of the properties that we thought was one that we really liked. And although they were taking offers on each individual property, they really wanted to sell it as a portfolio. So we submitted an LOI, went through the process, did everything, according to what, we had learned about, submitted the LOI. The deal actually went to one individual. He bought all 8 properties. It was, a very large number. And before it even closed, the broker called us back up and said, hey, the individual, was, we know you had interest in that. He doesn't really want that. One is a smaller unit, 48 units. And it was a bit of a value add. He just really wasn't interested in that anymore. And he said he'd like to sell that to you after he buys the rest of them. So that's kind of what happened. He wanted to do like a double close. We met the guy. He came from downstate New York and met us, and we just kind of hit it off and decided, hey, let's work this out. And we struck a deal. And as soon as he closed, within a couple of months, we had closed on taking that property from him.
That's pretty cool. Now, how many deals did you look at before you got this one? I mean, was this the first offer you made? You talk about submitting LOI, or was there maybe more than one?
Myself, I had submitted my wife and I 4 different LOIs prior to that. And this is only a matter of months after our education path that we had taken. So, and then John and I as well had worked on a couple of others, we looked at. So, I would say a half a dozen at this point.
Actually, that's amazing. I was looking for more like 100, right? Right? I mean, Garrett knows this. Typically, you're making you're analyzing a lot of deals and you're making a lot of offers. But as is evidence here, you have a little bit of a luck or not luck, right? Sometimes you can just you can get luck into something sooner, and then sometimes it takes a little longer. So there's a little bit of timing luck involved in there.
There was. I think the other thing part of this too was it was a more complex deal up front. Like Gary said, it was an 8-unit property. But the interesting part of this thing was, just throw it out there just as a topic. The original owner who was selling the property was being indicted. On like, I want to say about 70 counts. It was a very large, one of the larger property owners in all of the United States. And he's probably in the top 15 up in the country. And so the whole property was a very radioactive for some level. So we kind of looked at it like learning everything from your classes and all that there's always a chance for us to step away. So let's just work down the path on this property. And I think because of that, there wasn't probably a lot of other people looking to buy this deal. They were probably worried about the ramifications of what was going on. And we just kind of stuck with it. And every time we kind of hit a wall, we kind of realized, let's just keep pushing. We always have our escape route if we have to, but let's see where it goes. And we kept working hard.
We actually had difficulty getting title on the property. That was our first issue, was that there was a blanket email or a letter that was sent out to all the major title companies saying, don't title these properties. So our attorney looked at us and said, I don't even know if I can get title insurance. You guys might want to think about another property, but we were too stubborn. So we kept moving forward, and we did find title insurance, but it was a risk that we took.
One of the great things, and this is a good point, I love your guys back and forth right now, is when you have partners, you really feel like it's one of the powerful things of having partnership. You feel like you can't let the other person down, whereas it's much easier sometimes if you can quit on yourself. But if you got someone else that's in the ring with you, you guys are going to push each other harder to get to a certain place. And I have to think that had to play into this kind of a hairy deal. You guys had some challenges, but you guys are both friends. You're motivated to get to the finish line. Talk about how that kind of came into play with this one.
Well, I would just say that, as I stated in the beginning, I was always easy to talk myself out of a deal. John is very optimistic, and I would just say he's the one that kept pushing. I was probably a couple of times just saying, maybe we should think twice about this. And, to this day, I'm super glad we did not. But, John is kind of the one that kept saying, hey, let's keep moving forward. Like you said, we've got a way out, right? We can put our due diligence money down, earnest money. And, if things really, get hairy, we pull back. So we kept pushing forward.
It's an example of where if you hadn't partnered, what would have happened, right? It's like Gary's just in his own head, talking himself out of it constantly, right? I don't know if, John, if you were having similar conversations as well, but I'm just wondering what difference it made that you partnered with someone in where you are right now.
Well, I'm pretty sure that deal never would have happened even for myself. I think it would have been too big of a lift because there's too many. We had a lot of complications. I want to say we came up with a list of probably about 20 things that happened that we could easily have turned away. There are big problems, big issues. And I think if I was there myself, I probably could have talked myself out of it pretty easily because, like you said, having a partner and leaning on them and just talking through the scenarios and say, well, what if, what's our A, B, and C plan here? And once you talk through it, I think that was probably really the biggest deal for us to make things happen was the partnership kind of kept the glue for everything to work,
And this is another lesson here is tenacity, right? I don't know if you guys listening to this podcast, watching this on YouTube, it's a consistent theme. Deals are not just going to fall in your lap. And even our deals, and Garrett knows this more than anybody else because he's kind of finding the deals. It is tenacity. It's sticking with it. Even after you lose the deal and it comes back, it's tenacity at overcoming obstacles like you have, finding a particular opportunities. And this is why you guys won the deal, right? Everybody else says, I'm out. So there's too much hair on this thing here. Too much trouble. I'm just going to move on. You guys says, nope, we're going to do this deal. And that's why you won it. I love that.
Well, we also, Michael, our first deal, we had tenacity. We were working that thing for an entire year, and we don't have like a great story on the other side of it.
No, because we lost that deal.
It and we ended up losing that
daggone deal.
We lost our ass, and we lost the deal, and we lost that, like all that. The winning story out of that was that we've done 6 deals since then.
Well, this is a story, and when you lose a deal, which we did, and this is not the isolated. When you lose a deal, it's not a loss. But number one, you learn stuff yourself. Number two, you're building relationships because listen around the people. The reason one of the reasons you're here, Gary, is because we get to learn more about you, but also the brokers involved. They see how you behave. And we've heard stories before where someone lost a deal and 2 weeks later the broker called them up with an off-market deal. Hey, sorry it didn't work out. You're a great guy, great gal. Here's what I got for you. So your tenacity did not go unnoticed in the people around you.
Without that tenacity that I had to bring in, this was like, kind of my redemption. And people that know my story know I had a partnership fall apart, and then was trying to find my next partnership situation, and I had to prove myself to my next partners, which just happened to be you guys. But that tenacity stayed. And even though I wasn't making any money on this. We had money tied up in it. We had to work this deal for an entire year. It was a monster deal, 545 unit deal. And I couldn't have done it had you guys not been in the arena with me, I would have given up as well. At a certain point, I was like, I worked every day for an entire year because of that. So
Yeah.
And this is what I love about this business is partnerships. Like, you know, it's very rare to have a lone ranger on there. It's normally a partnership, and I love that. And you mentioned something, John, a second ago. This would have been too heavy of a lift, probably with the amount of due diligence tasks you had to overcome. But also, you guys raised like $1 million on this thing. Was that easy to do, or talk about that?
It wasn't. I would say we had, maybe half of the investors that we have today were kind of somewhat on board. They were like, "Hey, you guys find a deal." We were open and honest and all cards on the table. I think we had won people over because of that. We knew them. When it came down to closing and getting close, things started getting a little nervous because we were looking at how much money we actually had committed, and we were a bit far from the goal. So we just pushed ahead. We tried a few different things. One of them was we basically set up at a coffee shop for the entire day and just invited our investors, the ones that had expressed interest, to come in. And, every 15 minutes we went down and met with a different investor and went through our deal package with them. And we got them. So we got them all on, and they're super happy. We've been paying out distributions according to our plan, and our investors are super happy. And that was our main goal was, we didn't make, a killing on the first deal, right? It was pretty standard deal. We pulled back on our equity split just to make sure that our investors, we want them there next time. And I think that's what, that's where we are. When we do have the next deal, we've got some investors that are just like, "Hey, let us know when you got the next one." So very important.
All right, so you had your own investors. Gary, you knew people. John knew people. Then there was a meetup, and it sounds like you put the word out, and you did not immediately raise $1 million. It
wasn't immediate. We were down to the wire. I mean, we had enough to close. I think we needed about half of what we raised just to close. We were there, but we needed the extra for the building did come with some ills. We had planned on renovations. The apartments were, really needed a bunch of work. And we had planned actually to do like 12 of them in the first year, and we're up to 22. A lot of things were related to COVID, right? Because right after we closed, COVID.
Well, I want to get to that in a second, but how did you how did you bridge the gap? Because there's a lot of people are afraid of raising money. Like, my gosh, I got to raise X amount of dollars. What if I can't? Right? I mean, that thought must have crossed your mind. What if I can't? How did you overcome that?
Well, I think the biggest thing was that our meetup was our biggest pot of where we raised our money from. And the issue we had was people said they wanted to be part of it, but getting them to commit was the issue. Yeah. And I think once we, like Gary said, we had a few meetings with people we set up for different weekends, just getting them to sit down and go through it and let them know there's a finish line here and there's a deadline, and to get them to sign off. And it was just getting them to sit down and go through it, and for us to be there and kind of like demand, like, this is the date. If you're not here, you're going to miss out. And we actually had a few people that wanted to be part of it that kind of didn't get there when they should have. They missed out because we raised enough. And now they're coming back and like going, "Man, I know we missed the deal." And they're like all upset about it. But they going, "Well, the next one will be ready for you. Just don't be wishy-washy about it." Right. That was the whole. But I think it was that part of it kind of focused on sitting everybody down and making sure they knew there was a timeline. We had to stick to it. And moving on. You
built some scarcity into that. That would played into it a bit. But then you also, I'm sure you had to get the reps in too. So it was probably a combination of volume. And there were some tactics that went into it. Where were some more of the ways that you got people into the deal when it came down to the wire?
I think a lot of it was just being honest and open. John and I were like, "Listen, if we're not going to take a dime, we're not going to take our return." And another thing is we invested, so we threw in as much money as the largest investor did. So we got skin in the game. It's like, listen, we're here. We're not going anywhere. And I think that meant a lot. Just the sincerity of, our determination. We're not just going to raise money and walk on, and go to the next deal. We're here to make sure this is a success.
I can think of one thing too that we did that to the investors that were actually investors that came out of the woodwork. We didn't know these guys prior. They came looking for us. They heard about the deal, and but they were definitely more sophisticated and become good friends of ours since then. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to see the property. So we invited them out. We were able to bring them out there before we closed. The owner let us come out there and have them see the property. They walked around, looked at the property, and we knew they were smart enough to understand that there was work. So when they went in there, they weren't going to be, shocked by anything. But I think that was the one thing we'd offered. There was a few people were maybe questioning. We said, if you want to come look to make sure you understand what you get yourself into, we're willing to do that, knowing it was a risk. That was, but we knew we had to do it. So that was one of the things we did.
Again, hustle and tenacity, it's paying off. And every entrepreneur, I think, shares that quality, and you guys do as well. Now, you talked earlier about COVID, right? So I think you guys bought this right before it. Did that create any challenges for you?
Sure, it did. So we closed just before, the COVID started really hitting. And the issue that we had was primarily with our property management. We were required do our lender to have this under third property management, which we needed to anyway. The property's an hour and a half from us, so we can't be there all the time. And the property manager was like, hey, we can't even go on site. We can't show units. We can't go in and do repairs. And that, our building. So we had a couple of issues that we uncovered during our due diligence that required us to, we had an issue with asbestos. We had to abate some of the common hallways and whatnot. And that meant our plan was to displace tenants.
Oh boy.
So we did. And we, fortunately, we were able to do it within an 8-hour window. So we went 4 by 4, half of 4 at a time. And we actually had to have the tenants leave for the entire day. And it was a challenge that we had to face, but we were very successful in getting that done.
John, anything you want to add to that?
Not really. I mean, I think the biggest thing with the property with COVID was that, the thing is for us, we bought a property nearby purposely because we both are hands-on. And I think if we would have bought this property, just say in Texas, neither one of us would have been able to done much to help the property. But being that we were close enough, we were able to go out there because of COVID and be that in between part that needed to be there, to fix those problems or answer a question to a tenant or make sure one thing's getting done that was really important. Because it was so new, we just bought it. Without us doing that, we would have been just hoping,
I think that's a good point. There's two sides to it, right? It's like buying your local market. There's that whole side. There's obviously a benefit to that. If you know the market and you're around the property that's there. I think it has to be big enough in order for you to buy auto market a lot of times, because that, if you're buying a smaller deal and it's out of state, then it's tougher to be able to justify going to that market. That said, there's also a benefit to having the, bigger properties out of town. But I think in this instance, like you said, that's really good that you guys are able to go there and handle some of those challenges. What I really like about you guys are super scrappy, man. Like you guys you get in there, you solve problems, and now you guys have this investor base that trusts you. They're like, these guys, even if a problem arises, they're going to be able to pivot and handle those problems. And us as operators, that's really what it's about at the end of the day. The plan is not always, and rarely is it ever going to go 100% according to plan. And so at that moment, it's about, okay, how do we pivot and how do we make it and put it back on track? Or if it's ever off track, or at least have enough padding in there to be able to withstand those kind of challenges that come into the picture. And so love that you guys are able to pivot around COVID.
I'm just trying to reverse engineer some of your reasons that you guys feel you were successful. One common theme is definitely partnering. You talked a lot about that. The second one is your meetup. Your meetup came up repeatedly, where it was a source of investors who saw you in a position of authority, and you used that to basically raise $1 million. So you need to build a community around yourself. You did it with meetup with COVID, before COVID. That's probably a little more difficult to do now. How are you expanding that community of investors, after COVID? What are you guys doing with that?
So we're looking to get back into it. We definitely went, virtual after the COVID, we've been unable to get together, and it's been a huge challenge. And I think that's part of the reason that things have slowed down a little bit for us. And we're looking to, really dig back in and get backed up to where we were meeting once a month. Not having that synergy amongst the investors or our group, I think is a huge loss. It's a challenge that we've been trying to overcome, and we're really looking forward to getting back in there and resume these meetings. Not only did we have our monthly meetings at this venue, but we also started having mixers. That was John's idea. Some people just wanted to get together and socialize and, not do the PowerPoint presentations and learn about all the terms. And I think that helped a lot. In fact, some people have reached out to us, hey, let's get back together and do the mixers. So
there's so many different ways to do this. You guys have chosen to do meetups in person. There's other people who've chosen to go on Twitter, right, or LinkedIn. In fact, it varies so widely. The thing that they all have in common is they're all building a community somewhere with potential investors. And potential investors are everywhere, right? And if there's not one way or wrong way to do that, what other advice you guys have for someone who wants to do what you've done? Obviously partner, build a community around yourself. What other thing that would you advise someone that to make them successful?
Look into Michael Blank, go to any of his seminars and educate yourself. All those are the tools that you need to kind of get the base around you. You can go out there and beat the bushes for properties and find investors. But I think if you don't understand all the logistics behind it and what you're getting yourself into, you get yourself in a lot of trouble really quick. And I think that would be one of the things I advise is get yourself the education you need to know what you're doing before you jump into it too deep.
Man, that is such good advice. I love it. You guys did a perfect combination of, educating yourselves, partnering up, which is so cool because this is very much a partnership business, and then just taking action and taking something down. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us. I think it's going to inspire a ton of people. So we appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
And before we let them go, how can people connect with you guys?
Sure. So we've got a website. It's rockcapitalgroup.com, and that's just ROC capitalgroup.com. We're from Rochester, and everything's like rock this, rock that. So it's I'm at Gary at rockcapitalgroup.com. John is at John at rockcapitalgroup.com. Our meetup group is Upstate Commercial Apartment Investors Group, and we are in Rochester, Syracuse, and Buffalo. Fantastic ways to reach out to us, send us an email, take a look at our website.
Awesome.